Hello friends, Jermaine here. Welcome to the Firebase Authentication and Flutter course finale. In part 1 of the course, we set up Firebase Authentication and we used the Firebase Auth package to implement our login flow. In today's finale, we'll polish up the UI and use the Cloud Firestore API to persist the messages we type in our message form. And once we've got the functionality together, we'll also port our app over to the web. There might be a follow-up to this course, but that depends on you and how many likes this video receives. So here's the deal. If I get 200 likes across this course, then I'll go ahead and I will do a follow-up whereby I will cover other aspects of this chat application that I didn't cover in this finale. If this is your first time to the channel, be sure to like this video. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you don't miss out on future tutorials demonstrating how to be productive building full stack applications with Dart and Flutter. And without further ado, let's get into it. So let's go into Firebase and add another message to see what the second message would look like. So I'll add the document. And I'll set the author to Jermaine as well. And then the author ID to 1. And then the photo URL. And then we'll say timestamp, which is a number. Set the value. And I'll hit save. Okay. And let's go back to the app. So the app has been updated when we added the message, and we can see that with every message being added, we see the avatar showing twice, and also we see Jermaine said, which is a bit pointless. Ideally, we should not display Jermaine said and then the icon because it's a bit repetitive. It's already implicit if the message displays twice in a row. So to handle that, let's add a boolean that we can use to determine whether we should display the circle avatar or not. So I'll do that. I'll create another field called show avatar. And then we'll pass in the value here. And we'll set the default to true. And let's go ahead and implement the logic for this by coming to our message wall. And we'll define a method called should display avatar, and this method will take in an index. So what we need to do here is we're going to check the previous message if the author matches the current message we're iterating over, because if it matches, then that means it's the same author, or else it's a different author. So we'll check the very first message. So if the index is 0, we'll just return true. If it's not the very first index, then we need to capture the previous author ID. So we'll do messages index -1 dot data, then author ID. And then we'll retrieve the current author ID, which is based on the current index that's passed in this function. Then we do dot data, then author ID, and we just return author ID is not equal to previous ID. So if it doesn't match the previous ID, then that means it's a message from a separate user, and therefore we go ahead and we display the avatar. So over here we'll say show avatar, and then we'll invoke this function and then this method and pass in our index like so. And let's save that. Okay. So using that, we are able to come over here and then we'll say if show avatar, then we'll show the circle avatar. And you can already see the effect taking place. And I'll have an else block just so that we can shift the message forward a bit. So else, we just render a sized box with a width set to 40. Yep, like so. Okay, so that looks good. And let's go ahead and add a message from someone else. So if I create another message, and let's say the author is Sam, the author ID, the photo URL, timestamp, value, and timestamp should be a number, and I'll save that. Okay, and we got Sam said what's up, show up here. Okay, so you notice that the messages are not in the order in which they were posted, and that is why we were using the timestamp, because using that timestamp now allows us to be able to order by the time it was posted. So let's come back here, and I'm just going to open the console quickly and just chuck out a couple of timestamps. So I think I can do new date dot get time. So I can copy this and I will assign it to one of these messages. Sorry, timestamp, and let's place it in here. That update, and I'll go ahead and run it again. Hello world. And then I'll run it one more time for the message to Sam. Okay, so what this means now is we're able to come over here to our collection and we're able to order by the timestamp, like so. So if I go ahead and save this, then now we get that, which is what we wanted. Okay, let me refactor this slightly. So I'll come to the stateful widget class, and then I'll create a store variable which will contain a reference to our collection, and I'll do widget.store here, and I'll place that here like so. So just to make this look cleaner. Okay, let me save that, and everything else should be pretty fine. Let me collapse this again. And that looks good. Okay, so let's sort this bit out now. So on submit, we want to invoke another method. We'll call it add message. We'll take in the message value, and And in order to post, let's do a check on our user object. So let's just make sure we have a logged in user. So we'll do Firebase auth.instance.current user. And then we do if user is not equal to null, then we'll go ahead and add our message. And also we need a current user in order to set the author ID field of our chat message. So I'll do await, and I'll do widget.store.add to add in a new user. And so let's pass in our author, and we do user.displayName if it exists, or else we'll pass in anonymous. It should exist in most parts, but just in case it doesn't, you can just do that. Let's configure our author ID, and we want the user's UID. We'll set the photo URL, which will be the user's photo URL, or else we'll load a placeholder image. And we'll set a timestamp by doing timestamp.now .milliseconds since epoch. So we'll convert the timestamp to an integer. And then we just need to pass in the value of our message. Okay, so I'll copy this, and then we want to do that over here. All right, so let's try this out. If I hit send, nothing happens. If I type in lorem ipsum and I hit send, then there we go. We've got our message added. It'll be useful to style this a bit differently. So if I'm logged in and I add in a new message, no point displaying a photo of myself and saying Jermaine upon said. It'd be nice to display it differently, so ideally to the side and also in a different color. So let's do this. Let's do that right now. I'm going to create another widget. Oops, wrong place. Called ChatMessage. And we'll also import Flutter material. We'll define a stateless widget called ChatMessage. The child will be a row widget. We'll have a container as the first child, and also this container will take in some constraints where the max width is 300. We'll set a decoration as well, box decoration. In fact, let me copy that and paste it here, and the color will be blue-gray, and the border radius should pretty much be the same. I think the padding will also be the same. And then the child will be a text widget that will render the value from the data we pass in. So if I come to ChatMessageOther, scroll up here, I'm pretty much copying these bits like so, and I don't need this bit for now. So we'll do this.index, do this.data, and let's save this and pull this in our message wall, and we'll import ChatMessage. Before we display ChatMessageOther, we'll have a condition. And in this condition, we'll check who the user is, and then we'll use that to determine whether to display the chat message widget or not. So I'll create a couple of variables. So one called data, which will be our messages data. I'll just copy this and paste here. And we'll pass in data. And then the second variable will be our current user. So we do Firebase auth.instance.current user. So if user is not equal to null, and if the current user's ID matches the author ID, then we can return chat message. So chat message takes in an index and then takes in our data. So let me save this, and now that looks like that. So we'll come back to our chat message and we'll give this a color. And also the reason why we use the row is because we can set the main axis alignment to the very end. And I'll set the cross axis alignment to start. Okay, let's set some margins to insert this message in a bit. So set margin on our container widget, and we'll have edge inserts. Dot only, we'll set the left to 10, we'll set the right to 10. And let me add a second message to see what that looks like. Okay, we need to set the bottom to 5, and also we need to set the top to 5, I guess. In fact, I want to increase the spacing between the currently logged in user's message and then the message from the other users. So I will bring this back, and rather than show avatar, I'll just say has padding, and then pass it in here. So I can check if has padding, then let's set it to 15 or else to 5, and we can set that to true. And actually the default of this has to be false, and I'll get rid of this const keyword. Actually, I think I can just do that. Okay, I can't. Alright, so this looks good. Let's look at how we're going to delete messages. So in the demo, I showed you can delete a message by either swiping it to the left or to the right. So let's do that now. I will come to the message wall, and this chat message will be wrapped in another widget. And this widget is a dismissible widget. This takes in a function on dismissed with the direction you swiped. Not that it matters to us, so I'll just use an underscore. And then also we need to specify a key for this dismissible, or else it won't work properly. And the value key will be the current timestamp. So let's save this. Okay, when we swipe left to right, then we want to delete this message. So we'll have a function which is a value change type, and it will be a string, and I'll call this on delete. And let's define this here. And so when we dismiss, the message will invoke on delete. And we want to pass in the document ID, which if we come to our collection is these ones. So we'll pass in the string, which is the document ID, and then we'll be able to delete that from our collection. So to get the document ID, we'll do messages current index.id. So I'll save this. And if I come to this message, you see I'm able to dismiss it to the left and also to the right. But I'm not going to do that currently because we need to define this on delete function. So we'll come back to our main screen. And then over in message wall, we'll define on delete, which has the document ID. I mean, I can print out the document ID, but I think at this point it would be good to move a bit quickly. So I have void, I have a method called delete message, which will also have async. And deleting a message is as simple as running widget.store.doc, and we'll have doc ID here. So let me change this to doc ID dot, and then we'll invoke the delete method. And that's pretty much it for the method. And I'll copy that, and then I will paste it here like so. And I'll make sure all files are saved, including message wall. And so if I go ahead and swipe this to the right and go to our dashboard, the message was deleted. I'm not sure if you saw it, but I'll remove this, and then yeah, there we go, it's deleted. So now there's only 3 messages remaining. And let's add message again. In fact, what happens when we remove all our messages? So I'll do that now. So I'll delete the collection, and I'll create it again and just remove this document. And if we come back here, okay, we just get a blank message wall. So let's add another condition over here. So we do if snapshot.data.docs is empty, then we just return a center widget. The child will be a text widget that says no messages to display, like so. So therefore, if we go ahead and we add our first message, then it disappears, then we see that. So that looks about right. At this point, it would be good to look at the web implementation of this because we've not mentioned it up till now. And let me close the other files. All right, so to get to our web, we need to implement an AuthProvider for the web, because this implementation is specific for Android. And if you remember, in our index.html, we initialized our Firebase app differently. So we are going to create a web implementation, and then we'll use what's known as a conditional import to import the relevant file. It's a bit interesting the way we go about doing this, but first step is we need to create a stub type class, and then this stub class will be similar to the base class we created, AuthProvider base. So I'll import the Firebase dependencies, and then I'll also import AuthProvider base, and then our stub class will be called AuthProvider, which implements AuthProvider base. And then we'll go ahead and create these two missing overrides, and I'll save this file. And the idea of this stub is we are then able to come to our main.dart file, for instance, and then rather than importing Android AuthProvider directly, we'll do this instead. We'll do import source auth stub.dart, and then directly afterwards we'll have an if clause. So this is how conditional imports work in Dart. So if I pull up the documentation quickly, conditional imports look like this. We created our stub class, which is in auth stub.dart, and this line will target the native environment, and this line will target the web. So looking at this, we can come over here and say if dart.library.io, then we'll import, then we'll do this bit. Or if dart.library.html, meaning if we're running for the web, then we'll import a web auth provider .dart. So at this point, it would be good to go ahead and implement our web auth provider. So I'll create a new file under auth, and I'll create my web auth provider. I'm going to import the Firebase packages and AuthProvider base, and then we'll implement WebAuthProvider as a private class that implements AuthProvider base. Let's create our two missing overrides. In our initialize function, we just need to return firebase.apps.0, because if you remember in the index.html file, the app is initialized here. So we'll just return that. Secondly, in this sign in with Google, I'll mark this as a sync as well. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a new provider, like so. And then we'll assign it to a variable called provider. And then we'll instantiate Google Auth Provider. Secondly, we're going to define a list of scopes. So scopes determines the types of data we want to be accessible. So we'll do provider.add scope, and these are the list of scopes from the Google API documentation. I'll add the link in the description. We are also able to set custom parameters on the provider. So here's an example. Provider.set custom parameters, and we say login hint. That'll show that on the login form. And then lastly, we need to sign in and return the user credential. So we'll do return await Firebase auth .instance .sign in with popup and pass the provider in. And then lastly, we need to do class AuthProvider extends web AuthProvider. So hopefully at this point you see why we need to have this line here, because we're creating this AuthProvider class, which ties into the way we do conditional imports over here. Of course, Android AuthProvider has the very same line at the bottom, which ties in with our stub class that we're importing over here. So let me save all of this. And then in order to build for the web, I'll run flutter build web. And once we successfully built for web, we see the build folder appear here. So let's cd into build/web, and I'll run a server from this folder. So servp 8083. So I'm going to pull up the browser. So visited localhost 8083, and this is what we get. Let's sign in with Google. And I'll sign in with my other email address. And I should be signed in now. Although for some reason, we're not seeing the sign in button. Okay, it doesn't look like we can log out. So we're having a couple of problems. Yeah. In our homepage state, I'll define an init state lifecycle method. And let's invoke super.init state. Before I proceed any further, let me stop this app. And then I'll close this down. And I'll run this app on the web instead. So I'll select Chrome. And then I'll go ahead and run it. So that should open in Chrome. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'll make this smaller. So let's adjust our stream builder function a little bit. I'm going to add another if statement to check if we have an error. And if we do, then we'll return a text widget, and then I'll do snapshot.error.toString. Okay, so this is the error that we're getting. All right, so I actually Googled this issue, and it appears to be change relating to the current Cloud Firestore version we're using. So I'm going to come to web index.html, and I'll downgrade the Firebase Firestore version to 7.23.0. And let me stop and run this on the web again. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and sign in. And now click in sign in. Does nothing. Let's see. Let's come back to our main screen. Dart. Right, because of this line over here. So we need to copy this code because we're conditionally importing the AuthProvider. And let's get rid of that. Like so. And what happens if we go ahead and click sign in? Okay, so now we got that popped up now. Okay, so let me sign in with my other account. And I'll enter the password. I'll confirm on my phone. Okay, so now I'm logged in. So let me type a message if I can. Okay, I'm not able to send. Let's see what's happening. There seems to be an issue happening with this number incrementing. So let's do some debug. In the code base, if I come down to If I go to the message form, under the onPressed event, I think our issue may be caused by the set state that's happening. So let me comment that out. And then, okay, looks like we need to sign in again. So let's try and sign in. And let's type a message. And I hit send. All right, and we got it displayed. Yeah, so this set state was causing an issue, which in actual fact, we didn't need to set this at all because the widget gets re-rendered from the parent anyway. Okay, so we can do without this. So you'd notice that whenever the page refreshes, we see the sign in with Google button again, rather than the form. So to illustrate the problem, when I click sign in with Google and it signs in and I refresh the page, we see that it's reset to this, even though when we look at the console and we go to application and we look at the IndexedDB storage, we see our authentication information here. So to address that, I'll come back to main screen, and with this init state method we created earlier, we need to listen for changes to our auth state. So we can do Firebase auth.instance.auth state changes, because when the page initially loads, our Firebase app gets initialized, and then of course a check is made to ensure that we are logged in. So once that check is completed, then this gets triggered. So we need to listen for this event being triggered, which will contain details of a user. If the user is logged in, then user will be set to a user object, like so. So we can do this check. If user is user, then we'll set signed in equal to true, or else signed in will be set to false. And then we can do set state afterwards. Okay, so immediately we see that this is showed up now. So if I go ahead and refresh, then now the form shows up automatically because of this check that is made. Okay, so let me go ahead and log out. All right, so we logged out successfully. I'm going to build this one. And let's collapse all of this. Okay, once that's built, I'll stop this project, and then I'm going to run this project on the simulator. And then I'll cd into build/web, and then I'll run a server on port 8083. So I'm going to visit it in the browser. And then I've got that here. So over here, I'm logged in with this email address. And of course, here I'm logged in with another one. So let me sign in. And then I'll log in with my other email address. Okay. So I should be able to communicate between the two of them now. So if I hit say hello, then Jermaine Apong says hello, and I say what's up, Jermaine. There we go, it shows up here. And I'll respond by saying nothing much. Okay, we've got a working solution. There are other things we can do, like, for example, setting the scroll to the bottom whenever a new message is added. So let's say I add a couple more messages. Like such, it will be a good idea to automate the scroll to the top like so. Now, I'm more than willing to do this in a follow-up live stream and also make a couple of other improvements. So here's what it's going to be. If I get 200 likes on this course within the next 2 weeks, then I'll do a follow-up to this one. Whether it's going to be a live stream or just another video tutorial is to be determined. Probably likely a live stream. I don't know. But if I get 200 likes on this course, then I'll go ahead and do the follow-up, which will involve various other improvements to this app. So for example, if we add a message, then this will scroll up automatically to display the last message that was added. And also on the other chat apps, there'll be an icon that could appear here with a down arrow, or a message that will pop up here saying new message, see new message, and then you can tap on that and it will scroll automatically to the latest message. We can do stuff like that to improve the UX a bit, but a lot that's been done here with this app already. So I'm going to end the video here. If you enjoyed it, give this video a like. If you are not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you don't miss out on future tutorials and future mini courses like this one. If you have any questions about this course, let me know down below and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.